Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere a lot closer to our own time, but no less unsettling. A place of tunnels, fear, and endless crawling. We're diving into the world of the tunnel rats of the Vietnam War. Forget the war movies with dramatic hero shots and soaring music. The reality is suffocating, filthy, and claustrophobic. The kind of experience that clings to your body and mind long after the fighting is done. These soldiers weren't sitting behind tanks or flying bombers. They were crawling on hands and knees through narrow underground passages built to trap, suffocate and kill them. Before we drop down into the dark place together, take a second to breathe. Maybe get comfortable. Dim the lights, and if you want, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. It's always strange and fascinating to think about people tuning in from safe bedrooms while we walk through stories of people who had no such safety. The Vietnam War was a conflict fought above ground with helicopters, artillery, and jungles full of ambushes. But some of its most terrifying battles happened where hardly anyone could see. Just a few feet under the surface. Soldiers volunteered, or sometimes were ordered, to crawl down into the Viet Cong's tunnel networks, carrying almost nothing but a flashlight and a pistol. These tunnels stretched for miles, entire underground cities with sleeping quarters, kitchens, hospitals, and traps waiting for anyone foolish enough to enter. Imagine being told your job was to go down there alone, not knowing what waited in the dark. Congratulations, you're about to find out. You open your eyes, but there's no sunlight waiting for you. Just a heavy, stale kind of darkness that presses against your eyelids even when they're open. The air is damp, thick enough to taste, and carries that smell you can never quite wash away. Earth mixed with sweat, gun oil, mildew, and the faint hint of something rotten you pray isn't what you think it is. Morning for you doesn't mean the sound of birds or a clear sky. It means waking up half curled in a shallow foxhole, dirt sticking to your skin, and knowing that when the sun rises over the jungle canopy, it's not going to make your day any brighter. For tunnel rats, daylight doesn't matter. Your work is always done where light refuses to go. You stretch, though stretching is a luxury. The damp soil beneath your body grips your clothes, clinging like a second skin. Your uniform isn't pressed or clean. It's wrinkled, stiff with yesterday's sweat, and patched with stains that will never wash out. Your boots, if they're still holding together, are caked with mud that smells faintly like rot. There's no pillow, no mattress. Just a helmet serving as an uncomfortable headrest, and the ever-present buzzing of insects reminding you you're not alone. Sleep wasn't restful, not with the constant rattle of distant gunfire, the nervous breathing of men beside you, and the knowledge that today, again, you'll have to crawl where no sane person wants to go. Waking up doesn't come with coffee or breakfast. It comes with the metallic taste of adrenaline already in your mouth. The first thought is always the same. Am I going to come back up when they send me down? You've seen men return with 1,000-yard stares, unable to speak, eyes wide as though they left something down there and can't stop searching for it. You've also seen the ones who didn't come back at all, swallowed by dirt, traps, or gunfire muffled under feet of earth. That's the reality you face before you even stand up. You rub your eyes with the back of your hand, feeling grit grind against your skin. It never goes away, the grit. The jungle floor is a factory of dust, mud, and sweat that seeps into every pore. And underground, it only gets worse. The tunnels aren't clean or smooth. They're rough, jagged in places, walls sweating with moisture. Air so thick it feels like breathing through wet cloth. You remember the first time they sent you down? Your stomach twisted into knots so hard you thought you'd vomit before even reaching the entrance. No amount of preparation tells you what it's like until you're down there, when the ceiling scrapes your helmet, the ground scrapes your elbows, and you realise you're crawling into the unknown with only a dim flashlight and a pistol that feels pitifully small. But you're not there yet. For now, you're above ground, and the morning ritual is all about pretending the day ahead is survivable. You reach for your canteen. The water inside is lukewarm, metallic, and tinged with the faint taste of whatever chemicals they've used to keep it from killing you outright. It doesn't refresh so much as coat your throat in something that reminds you of rust. You drink anyway, because you know you'll be sweating buckets once you go below, and thirst down there is worse than fear. You can't risk letting your mouth go dry, not when every scrape and crawl demands you stay focused. You glance around. Other men are stirring too, some pulling themselves out of shallow foxholes, others lighting cigarettes with trembling hands. Cigarettes are comfort here, even if they burn your lungs. For a brief moment, the smoke masks the stink of mildew and sweat, but everyone knows the moment is temporary. The fire in the cigarette glows in the early gloom, then fades, leaving only more nerves behind. Conversations are short, clipped, sometimes just a nod or a muttered curse. Nobody wants to say too much, because words feel useless against the weight pressing down on all of you. You check your gear, because gear is all that stands between you and a one-way trip. The pistol, usually a 45, is cleaned, oiled and loaded. It's small, but it has to be small because there's no room for rifles underground. Your flashlight, the most important tool, gets a quick flick of the switch. Sometimes it flickers, sometimes it dies when you need it most. Batteries are precious, and the tunnels eat light faster than you'd think. You tuck a spare into your pocket, though you know even spares have a way of failing. A knife hangs at your side too, though you pray you never need to use it in close quarters. Down there, everything is close quarters. Breakfast, if you can call it that, comes from a can. Cold beans, maybe some meat that smells like it's been dead longer than it should. You shovel it down mechanically, not because you're hungry, but because food is fuel, and you don't know when the next chance to eat will come. The taste is dull, metallic, but it sits in your stomach like a weight, sometimes too heavy, when nerves churn it back up later. But skipping a meal isn't an option. Weakness kills faster than bad food. Orders come quickly. They don't shout them, because noise carries. It's just a quiet nod, a name called, a finger pointed toward the waiting tunnel entrance. Today, it's yours. The pit in your stomach sinks deeper, but your face stays blank. You've learned to wear that blankness like a mask. Show too much fear, and it spreads to the others. They need to believe you can handle it. You need to believe it yourself, even if belief feels hollow. You walk toward the entrance, every step heavier than the last. It doesn't look like much from the outside, just a small hole in the ground, barely wide enough for a man to slip through. But you know better. That hole leads into a maze carved by hands determined to fight forever, no matter how many bombs fall above. You've seen maps, sketches, rumours of how far the tunnels stretch. Miles, sometimes, whole networks branching in every direction. Hospitals, armories, living quarters. It's an entire world under the jungle, designed to hide, to resist, and to kill anyone who dares to enter. Standing there, staring at the opening, you feel the earth itself waiting. The air that drifts up from below is warmer, damp with the smell of mould and decay. It's like standing at the mouth of some ancient animal waiting to be swallowed whole. You kneel, take one last breath of the jungle air, heavy with humidity, yes, but at least open, and then lower yourself down. The first scrape of dirt against your arms, the press of earth against your shoulders, it tells you there's no going back. Not until you've gone as far as they need you to go. Above ground, the war is chaos. Helicopters thump overhead. Artillery rumbles in the distance. Rifles crack through the trees. But once you're inside the tunnel, all of that fades. The noise muffles, replaced by silence so complete it rings in your ears. Your flashlight beam cuts a narrow path, but it doesn't reach far. Shadows press close, shifting as your light moves, always suggesting shapes that aren't really there. Or maybe they are. Every inch forward feels like an invasion into a place that doesn't want you. You crawl on elbows and knees, the ceiling brushing your back, the walls squeezing your shoulders. Claustrophobia isn't a phobia anymore. It's just life. You feel the dirt shift under your palms, sometimes crumbling, sometimes slick with moisture. Each movement is calculated, slow, because rushing means noise, and noise means discovery. You're intruding in someone else's home, and they've rigged it to punish intruders. A tripwire here, a spike pit there, sometimes a grenade waiting just around a corner. You think about all of it as you inch forward, heartbeat loud in your ears, sweat dripping into your eyes. This is your morning. Not sunlight, not breakfast, not routine. Just dirt, darkness, and the knowledge that you're crawling deeper into a world where every sound, every smell, every breath could be your last. And as you push forward, part of you wonders why the earth feels more alive than you do. Because down here, the tunnel isn't just space, it's an enemy. You pull yourself back out of the hole, dirt clinging to your sleeves and caking in the folds of your clothing, and you're reminded again of what you're wearing. The uniform is always there, wrapped around you like an extra layer of discomfort. On paper, it's the standard issue of the time. Lightweight fatigues, green, designed to blend into the jungle. In reality, it's a prison of fabric that never quite fits and never quite works the way it's supposed to. The shirt is too loose in some places, too tight in others. Sleeves ride up when you don't want them to. Cuffs catch on thorns. Seams rub your skin raw in the heat. The pants sag when wet, cling when dry, and no matter how many times you wash them, or try to wash them, they carry that permanent smell of sweat, mildew, and old fear. It's like the fabric itself has absorbed the war. You could hand them down 20 years later, and the next person would know exactly where they'd been without a single word spoken. The boots are worse. Jungle boots, high cut, heavy, with soles designed to grip in mud and drain water through little vents on the side. In training, someone told you they were built for the environment. Out here, they just become wet coffins for your feet. The vents clog with mud, the insides fill with water anyway, and the constant dampness breeds blisters, trench foot, and infections you don't even want to think about. You try to keep your socks dry, but there's no such thing as dry in Vietnam. Step into the jungle, and within minutes your feet are sweating again, skin softening, peeling and splitting. Then you add crawling through tunnels, scraping toes and heels against walls of hard-packed earth, and those boots turn into torture devices. The helmet doesn't help. Heavy, awkward, it slides down over your eyes when you need it steady, knocks against low ceilings in the tunnels, and traps heat against your scalp until sweat pours into your eyes. Sometimes you ditch it when crawling underground, because the last thing you want is to get stuck by an inch of steel on your head. But above ground, regulations demand you keep it on, even if it feels more like a burden than protection. A helmet might stop a piece of shrapnel, but it won't stop the headache that builds after hours under the sweltering sun. And then there's the gear strapped to you. Belts, pouches, canteens, knives, grenades, sometimes a radio. It all hangs awkwardly, shifting and jangling when you move, snagging on vines, digging into your sides when you crawl. You adjust constantly, tightening straps, shifting weight, but nothing ever feels right. The webbing rubs your shoulders until they're raw, and the metal buckles press into bone. When you finally strip it all off at the end of the day, your body is covered in red marks, bruises and cuts that sting with every drop of sweat. The pistol holster is the one thing you check again and again. You have to know where it sits, have to be able to reach it in an instant. It's supposed to ride snug against your chest or thigh, but straps stretch, fabric sags, and sometimes you fumble in the dark for the grip, praying it's still there. The idea of losing your pistol in the tunnels is unthinkable. Without it, you're just a man crawling through the earth with nothing but your hands. Even the smallest details of the uniform work against you. The buttons never stay fastened. The zippers stick. A stitching phrase after a few weeks of use. You patch with whatever you can, tape, wire, scraps from other uniforms, but nothing lasts long in the humidity. The jungle eats fabric as surely as it eats metal. Mildew grows in dark spots. Seams rot. And when the rain comes, which it always does, the whole thing soaks through in seconds and clings to you like cold skin. Then the sun comes back, and the fabric dries stiff with salt from your own sweat, turning your clothes into boards that scrape with every movement. You remember how the recruiters and manuals called them fatigues. It's an accurate name. Just putting them on makes you tired. Wearing them drains you. Every inch of fabric reminds you that you don't belong here, that your body is being forced into a role it was never built for. Nothing fits, nothing breathes, nothing protects. The uniform isn't armour. It's just a constant reminder that you're in a place where survival doesn't come easy. And there's no escape from it. You don't get multiple sets to rotate. You don't get a clean change every morning. You get what you have, and you wear it until it disintegrates, or until your tour ends, whichever comes first. By then the uniform is less clothing and more like a diary written in stains. Mud from a flooded tunnel. Sweat rings that never washed out. Blood from a scrape that got infected. Every mark tells a story you don't want to remember, but can't ever forget. Sometimes, when you're above ground, you catch a glimpse of yourself reflected in a puddle or a shard of metal. The face is yours, but it doesn't look the way it used to. Sunken cheeks, dirt smeared across your skin, eyes ringed with exhaustion. And then there's the uniform wrapped around you, sagging, frayed and filthy. It's like the jungle has dressed you in its own image, stripping away any trace of the world you left behind. Even when you try to sleep, the uniform follows you. You can't strip down. The mosquitoes will eat you alive, and the ground will soak you in cold sweat if you try. So you lie there, half curled, fabric scratching against your skin, boots never fully off because you might need to move fast. Rest doesn't feel like rest when you're wrapped in something that chafes and suffocates. You wake up with new rashes, new sores, new reminders that your body is slowly breaking under the constant irritation. Some men joke about it, call it the world's worst tailor job, say the army bought uniforms in bulk and didn't care if they fit or not, but the laughter never lasts long. Everyone knows the truth. The uniform is just another enemy, quieter than the Viet Cong, but relentless in its own way. Every step, every crawl, every breath is harder because of it. You can't strip it off. You can't fix it. You can only endure it. And endurance is the only currency that matters here. It's not just the physical discomfort. It's the mental weight. When you feel the uniform hanging heavy on your shoulders, soaked through with sweat, reeking of rot, it reminds you of where you are. Reminds you that this isn't temporary, that you can't just peel it off and walk away. You're stuck in it, the same way you're stuck in the war. And that's the part that digs deepest. Not the fabric against your skin, but the thought pressing in on your mind. This is you now. This is your life. And when the order comes, when someone points toward another black hole in the ground and tells you it's time, you don't get to change into something more comfortable. You don't get protective gear, padded suits, or anything that might make the crawl easier. You just drop to your knees in the same ragged clothes, pistol in one hand, flashlight in the other, and feel the earth scrape against your uniform like it's trying to peel it off. So every morning, every night, every crawl through the dirt, the uniform stays with you. Not because it's strong, not because it protects, but because you don't have a choice. It clings, it chafes, it smells, and it never quite fits. But neither does this war. The morning doesn't begin with comfort. It begins with the sound of insects buzzing in the damp air, the distant crack of rifle fire somewhere you can't see, and the quiet shuffle of men opening their rations. Breakfast isn't a meal here. It's a negotiation with your stomach and your nerves. You wake up already sweating, already feeling the fabric of your uniform stuck to your back, and the thought of food barely registers. But you eat anyway, because the body won't crawl through tunnels on nothing. Fuel matters, even when the fuel tastes like metal, salt, and something that probably expired before it was even shipped across the ocean. The rations come in heavy brown boxes, stamped with government lettering that makes them sound more official than they are. They're sea rations, little cans packed with meals that were designed in offices thousands of miles away by people who would never have to sit on the jungle floor, spooning cold beans out of a tin while swatting mosquitoes from their face. Each meal has a name, but none of them sound right once you open them. Ham and eggs chopped, beef stew, turkey loaf. Labels that pretend you're about to have a normal breakfast, but the smell says otherwise. You pull the tab or pry open the lid with a knife, and what's inside is always the same shade of grey-brown mush. The consistency changes only slightly depending on how long the can has been sitting in the heat. Sometimes it's firm enough to keep its shape when you shake it out, like dog food. Sometimes it's half liquid, swimming in a grease that coats your spoon and refuses to wash off. If you're lucky, you get something you can at least swallow without gagging. If not, you choke it down, because hunger isn't optional. The crackers come next. Thick, hard, designed to last decades if they had to. They don't crunch so much as shatter into dusty fragments that dry out your mouth faster than the jungle ever could. You chew and chew, the crumbs sticking to your tongue, forcing you to gulp down more of the metallic tasting water from your canteen just to keep from choking. Sometimes there's peanut butter or cheese spread in a little green tin, both of them oily and separated, but they smear across the cracker enough to fool you into thinking it's food. Then there's the treat, the thing the army must have thought would keep morale high. A piece of candy, maybe a square of chocolate, sometimes a pack of gum. The chocolate melts into a sticky mess in the heat. The gum turns brittle, but you still hold onto it like it means something. A reminder that once, before you crawled into dirt holes, you could grab a candy bar from a store without thinking about it. Here, sugar is more than taste. It's a memory. Coffee is an option too, if you have the patience. Little packets of instant powder, bitter and grainy, mixed with water that never quite boils hot enough. You sip it anyway, the warmth settling in your gut even as the flavour makes you grimace. Cigarettes come in the pack as well, 4 or 5 of them, rolled tight and tasting like damp paper when lit. Men chain smoke through breakfast, filling the humid air with a haze that mixes with the scent of canned stew and sweat. Nobody eats quickly, but nobody eats slowly either. It's a ritual, something to do with your hands while your mind circles around the thought of what comes next. Conversations are short, clipped, sometimes jokes about the food, sometimes silence heavy enough to swallow. No one admits they're scared, but it hangs in the air thicker than the smoke. The clink of spoons against cans, the crunch of crackers, the coughs after a drag. It's all background noise to the thought sitting at the back of every man's mind. Soon, someone's going down into the tunnels. Eating in the jungle isn't peaceful. You're never just sitting with your food. Ants swarm the moment you drop a crumb. Flies hover over the open cans. Mosquitoes stab at your wrists the second you pull your sleeves back to eat. Sometimes you find beetles floating in your water, or worse, and you scoop them out without a word. Hunger doesn't care about cleanliness here. You keep eating. Always keep eating. Because you don't know if lunch will happen, or if you'll even be above ground long enough to open another can. The food sits heavy in your stomach almost immediately. It's not designed to be light, not designed to keep you comfortable while crawling on your belly. It fills you, weighs you down, and then sloshes uncomfortably when you're sent below. More than once you felt the rations threatening to come back up while you inch forward in the dark. But vomiting in the tunnel isn't an option. You swallow hard, you grit your teeth, and you remind yourself you'll eat again when you come back out. If you come back out. There's a rhythm to breakfast, even if it's miserable. Tear the can, scrape the food, chew, swallow, wash it down, light a cigarette, look at the tunnel entrance, look away, pretend to joke with the man next to you, go quiet again. Every step is mechanical, practiced. You've done it enough times that your hands move without thought, but the nerves never leave. They just sit there, under your skin, coiled tighter with every bite. Some men can't eat at all before going under. The nerves lock their stomachs, and the smell of the rations turns them green. They force down a cracker, maybe sip some water, and leave the rest. Others eat double, cramming calories into their bodies like it will armour them against what's coming. You find your balance somewhere in the middle, enough to keep from shaking, not enough to make you gag when the air underground grows thick and suffocating. Breakfast isn't shared in mess halls or long tables. It's eaten sitting on mud, balancing cans on your knees, while sweat drips down your face and dirt sticks to your hands. There's no clatter of trays, no sound of laughter echoing in a room. Just the jungle pressing in, alive with the chirping of unseen insects and the occasional distant thud of artillery. And all the while, the tunnel waits. The opening stares back at you while you chew, as if reminding you that the food is only temporary, that the real work is still waiting below. When the cans are empty, they're tossed aside or crushed flat. Ants swarm them almost instantly, carrying away crumbs that mean nothing to you but everything to them. A reminder that in this place, nothing is wasted. Even your leftovers feed something. The spoons are wiped clean on pant legs, shoved back into pockets. Cigarettes are smoked down to stubs and flicked into the mud. And then the quiet returns, heavier now, and because eating was the last distraction before the crawl. The weight of the rations in your stomach feels like lead as you stand. Your body wants to rest, to digest, but there's no time for that. The war doesn't wait for your comfort. The men glance at each other, some looking at the ground, some staring at the hole. Names will be called. One of them will be yours, and as you adjust your gear, as you feel the uniform clinging wet against your skin, you already know breakfast wasn't about feeding your body. It was about reminding you that you're still human, even in a place designed to strip humanity away. And with that last bite still heavy in your stomach, you pick up the pistol, flick your flashlight on and off one more time, and wait for the inevitable order that will send you back into the dark. The food sits like a rock in your stomach, but you don't think about digestion for long. The next thought is always gear, the tools you're carrying. Not the kind that fill a warehouse or an armory, not heavy artillery or polished rifles. Just the stripped down, bare minimum that fits into the narrow ribs of the earth. Tunnel rats aren't armed like the rest of the army. They can't be. The tunnels themselves decide what you're allowed to carry, and the tunnels don't make room for much. First, the pistol, always the pistol. Usually a 45, the M19 und Levin, heavy in the hand, solid, reliable, loud. Too loud if you've ever fired it in a tunnel. The blast cracks against the dirt walls and ricochets into your skull like a hammer blow. One shot underground can leave your ears ringing for hours, vision swimming, and balance wrecked. But it's the weapon you trust, stopping power in a single pull. If someone waits just around the bend, crouched in the dark, you want something that will drop them before they drop you. You check the magazine more times than you need to, fingers running over the smooth metal, thumb pressing each round like reassurance. Some men prefer a revolver. Smaller, lighter, less noise in the confined space, though the truth is no gun is quiet underground. Others tape flashlights under the barrel, jury-rigged contraptions that point light and death in the same direction. But nothing feels perfect. Every choice is compromise. The pistol is either too heavy, too loud, or not enough. But it's all you have. You tuck it close, always within reach, always at the front of your mind. Then comes the flashlight, the real lifeline. A battered metal cylinder, lens scratched, beam weak even on a good day. Batteries drain faster than they should, and when the bulb dies, it dies without warning. Some men carry spares, others carry 2 lights, though the weight adds up. You cradle the flashlight in one hand, pistol in the other, and crawl with elbows and knees. Every flicker of light feels like a betrayal. Every shadow a threat. You never trust the beam fully. You've seen lights cut out at the worst possible time, plunging men into absolute darkness where every inch forward is blind and every sound is magnified. A knife hangs at your belt, long enough to be useful, short enough not to snag in tight corners. It's a last resort, but sometimes last resort is all you get. In the dark, inches from another body, the pistol is clumsy. The knife doesn't jam, doesn't echo. It's crude, brutal. But in the tunnels, brutality is survival. You run your thumb over the hilt sometimes, reassuring yourself it's still there. You pray you never need it, and you know one day you might. Grenades don't always make sense, but some men carry them anyway. Small, compact, meant for clearing side passages. But throwing one in a tunnel is rolling dice with your own life. Blast waves bounce off walls, shrapnel has nowhere to go but back at you, and the confined space turns every explosion into a potential coffin collapse. Still, in the right situation, a grenade can mean the difference between walking out alive and not walking out at all. You keep one hooked to your belt, heavy, cold, a promise you hope not to keep. The uniform itself becomes part of the toolkit. Pockets stuffed with spare magazines, a rag for wiping sweat and dirt from the flashlight lens, maybe a photograph folded into a waterproof pouch. Some men tuck in little tokens from home, good luck charms that mean nothing to the jungle, but everything to them. A small lighter, not just for cigarettes, but for quick tests of airflow in the tunnels. If the flame bends, you know there's a draft, maybe another exit, maybe a trap. You also learn to improvise. Pieces of wire for probing ahead, chalk for marking paths, though sometimes the sweat washes it away before you return. A coil of string tied to your belt, trailing behind you so you don't get lost in the endless maze. None of it official issue, none of it standard. Just things passed down from men who crawled before you. Little tricks whispered in mess tents. Tested in the dirt, sometimes paid for in blood. Ear protection isn't standard. Nobody hands you a pair of plugs before sending you down. You learn the hard way that a single shot underground feels like a thunderclap inside your skull. Some men tear cloth from their uniforms, stuff it into their ears, hope it dulls the pain without muting the sounds they need to hear. The scrape of movement, the click of a trap, the hiss of breath from someone waiting in the dark. Hearing is survival, but so is sanity. You balance between them, never sure if you've chosen right. Your body becomes a tool too. Every sense sharpened. You smell the earth, the mildew, the faint traces of smoke or food that tell you you're close to a hidden chamber. You feel vibrations in the dirt through your palms, footsteps above, movement ahead. Your eyes, narrowed against the dim light, search for anything out of place. A line of wire, a patch of disturbed soil, the glint of something metal. You breathe shallow, listening for echoes, trying to map the tunnel in your head. The equipment helps, but it's your body that does most of the work. And the body breaks faster than the gear. There's no glamour in these tools. Nothing polished, nothing ceremonial. Just the bare minimum that fits in a space barely wider than your shoulders. You don't get rifles, you don't get armour, you don't get backup. You get a pistol, a light, a knife, and the nerve to keep moving forward. The tunnels don't care if you have the best equipment in the world. They care if you're willing to crawl deeper into the dark, carrying tools that feel more like suggestions than guarantees. You clean them religiously. After every crawl, after every near miss, you sit in the mud with a rag and oil and wipe down the pistol. You shake the flashlight, test the beam, Replace batteries if you have them. You run a finger over the knife edge, sharpening it on a stone when it dulls. You check and recheck, because failure doesn't come with second chances. If the pistol jams, if the light dies, if the knife slips from your belt, there's no resupply waiting a few feet behind. There's only you, the dark, and whatever waits inside it. And when you're finally told to move, when you kneel by the entrance and feel the air rising up from below, you grip those tools like lifelines. The pistol in one hand, heavy and loud. The flashlight in the other, weak and flickering. The knife against your side, silent and sure. Everything else fades. The cigarettes, the candy, the spare socks stuffed into your pack. All that matters is the handful of metal and light you carry into the earth. Every man who's ever gone down knows the truth. The tools don't make the tunnel safer. They don't give you control. They just give you a fighting chance. And most days, that's the best you can hope for. The hole doesn't look like much. It never does. Just a patch of ground that seems a little darker, a little softer, sometimes framed by roots or half covered with leaves. You'd miss it if you didn't know what to look for. The Viet Cong built them that way, small, hidden, practically invisible unless you were standing right on top of one. To the untrained eye, it could be anything. A patch of mud, a shadow under a tree, a natural dip in the earth. But you know better. You see the edges, the unnatural cut of the soil, the faint signs that someone has been moving in and out. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's not just a hole in the ground. It's the mouth of something alive, waiting to swallow you. They call you forward. You kneel, brushing away loose dirt, widening the opening just enough for your shoulders. The earth crumbles in your fingers, damp, heavy with a smell of rot. Air rises from below, warm and stale, carrying with it the stink of mould, sweat, and something metallic that clings to the back of your throat. It's not just air. It's a warning. A reminder that what you're about to enter is not a tunnel. It's an underworld carved by hands determined to make sure you never come back out. The men behind you stay quiet. They don't crowd the entrance. They know better. It's your job, not theirs. And there's no room for more than one body at a time. They stand back, weapons slung, eyes fixed on the ground or the tree line, pretending not to notice the way your hands tremble as you check your pistol, flick the flashlight on and off one last time. Nobody jokes, nobody tells you to hurry. The silence says everything. They know what waits below, and they're grateful it's not them. You lower yourself slowly, one leg at a time, the earth closing around you with every inch. The walls scrape your boots, dirt crumbling into your socks. Your shoulders catch on the sides, and you twist, forcing yourself through. The light above shrinks, dimming to a circle the size of your helmet, then smaller, until it's just a thin glow. The jungle air fades. The sounds of insects, birds, and distant artillery muffle, replaced by the close, suffocating hush of the tunnel. You're inside now. The entrance seals behind you like a throat, swallowing the last bit of the world you know. The space is tighter than you imagined. Always tighter. You press your chest to the dirt, elbows digging into the floor as you crawl. The ceiling scrapes your helmet, forces you to tilt your head sideways. Your breath echoes in your ears. Too loud, too fast. You slow it down, trying not to panic, trying not to imagine the tons of soil above you, waiting for the smallest shift to bury you alive. The flashlight beam cuts a narrow cone through the dark, but it doesn't push far. Shadows close in just beyond the reach of the light, thick and heavy, hiding everything they want to hide. Every sense sharpens. You hear the trickle of water dripping somewhere deeper. You feel vibrations through your hands as you crawl. Faint tremors that could be footsteps, or just the earth shifting. The smell grows worse the farther you go. Sweat soaked into the walls. Food cooked days ago. The smoke still clinging to the soil. Human waste in corners you can't see. And beneath it all, the faint copper tang of blood. You tell yourself it's just rust, just old earth. But you know the tunnels keep their secrets, and not all of them are old. The entrance doesn't just lead to a tunnel. It leads to a world designed to disorient you. Narrow passages branch left and right. Some slope downward until the air feels heavier, harder to breathe. Others curve upward, leading toward chambers that might hold supplies, traps, or enemies waiting with rifles pointed at the dark. Every path feels wrong. Every choice a gamble. You push forward anyway, because turning back isn't an option. Not until you've gone as far as they need you to. You learn quickly that the entrance is a line you can't uncross. Above ground, fear is manageable. You can see the sky, hear your squad, breathe fresh air. Below ground, the fear is physical. It presses against your chest, squeezes your lungs, crawls across your skin. It whispers to you in the silence, telling you that the earth wants to keep you. The entrance isn't just a hole in the ground. It's a contract. Once you slide through it, you've agreed to fight the war in a place where the rules don't apply, where survival depends on nerves and luck more than training. Some men pause at the lip, just long enough to take one last drag of a cigarette, exhaling smoke into the jungle air before dropping the butt and sliding into the dark. Others whisper a prayer, quiet enough that no one else hears. You do neither. You just go. Because thinking too long only makes it worse. The longer you stare into the black mouth of the tunnel, the more it feels like it's staring back, waiting to drag you under. Better to move, to get it over with, to let the earth close around you before your nerves lock your body in place. Once you're inside, the entrance is gone. The memory of light, of air, of open space fades. You're surrounded now, pressed on all sides, crawling deeper into something that feels less like soil and more like the inside of a predator. And the farther you go, the more you realise the entrance isn't just where the tunnel begins. It's where you end if you don't make it back. The first few feet are always the hardest. The moment when the sunlight disappears behind you, and the dark presses forward like it's been waiting. You crawl on your elbows and knees, trying to keep the pistol steady in one hand, the flashlight in the other, and your body moving in a rhythm that doesn't scrape too loudly against the walls. The dirt is coarse, crumbling under your weight, sticking to your face when you brush against it. Every movement is slow, deliberate, because speed is noise and noise is death. The tunnel feels alive. The walls are damp, slick with condensation that soaks into your sleeves. Drops of water fall from the ceiling and run down the back of your neck, cold enough to make you flinch. The air is heavy, thick, like breathing through a wet rag. Each inhale fills your mouth with a taste of earth. Each exhale echoes back at you louder than you'd like. You try to quiet your breathing, but the effort only makes it worse. The more you think about it, the louder it sounds. It's as though the tunnel itself is listening, waiting for you to slip. You move forward, inch by inch, the beam of your flashlight cutting through the dark. The light is weak, barely strong enough to show you a few feet ahead, and the shadows swallow everything beyond that. Every flicker of the bulb makes your stomach tighten. You imagine it dying, leaving you blind, alone in the dirt with nothing but touch to guide you. The thought makes you grip it tighter, as if your hand alone can force it to stay alive. The space narrows without warning. One moment you can crawl on your knees, the next you're pressed flat on your stomach, elbows dragging against the floor, pistol jammed close to your chest to keep it from catching. Your helmet scrapes against the ceiling, forcing you to tilt your head sideways to squeeze through. The dirt shifts around you, little cascades of soil trickling down the back of your neck, filling your ears, your collar, your boots. Every slide of soil feels like the start of a collapse, and you hold your breath until the walls settle again. Claustrophobia isn't an abstract idea here. It's a constant companion. The tunnel squeezes you from all sides, pressing into your ribs, your spine, your legs. There's no turning around, no room to shift. Forward is the only option. You think about how many tons of earth rest above your body, how easy it would be for one careless movement, one grenade blast overhead, to bury you in seconds. The dirt would fill your mouth before you could scream. That's the thought you keep pushing down, again and again, every time you feel the walls tremble under your weight. The smell grows worse the farther you go. Sweat, urine, smoke, food long since rotted, the faint sweetness of decay. The Viet Cong lived in these tunnels. They ate, slept, cooked, and bled down here. The walls hold their history like a sponge. The scent clings to your uniform, soaks into your skin, and even when you crawl back out, it follows you. Men say you can smell a tunnel rat even in the open air. A mixture of dirt and rot that doesn't wash off, no matter how many times you scrub. You pause, listening. The silence is complete but not peaceful. It's the kind of silence that amplifies everything you don't want to hear. The thud of your heartbeat in your ears. The scrape of fabric against dirt. The faint rustle that could be a rat, or a snake, or something worse. You strain to separate real sounds from the ones your mind invents, but down here they blend together until you can't tell the difference. You keep moving, because staying still makes the silence louder. The tunnel branches. To the left, a narrow slope downward, the dirt damp with moisture. To the right, a passage just wide enough to crawl through. Straight ahead, the tunnel continues into darkness. You shine the flashlight into each one, searching for signs of traps. Wires across the floor, sharpened stakes, glints of metal. You find nothing, but that means nothing. The Viet Cong were masters of concealment. A trap could sit inches from your face, invisible until it was too late. You choose the direction anyway, because hesitation doesn't keep you safe. It just gives the dark more time to breathe against your neck. Your body aches from the strain, elbows bruised from pressing against the dirt, knees raw from crawling, back bent at angles it was never meant to bend. Sweat runs into your eyes, stings, mixes with the dirt until you can barely blink it away. The uniform scratches, chafes, sticks to your skin, but you stop noticing after a while. Pain becomes part of the crawl, just another weight you carry with you. You think about the men who dug these tunnels. Bare hands, shovels, baskets of dirt carried out one scoop at a time. Entire networks built under the feet of armies, invisible cities stretching for miles. They knew you'd come down here one day. They knew you'd crawl through these same passages, pistol in hand, and they built them to break you before you ever reached them. Every narrow turn, every suffocating slope, every silent chamber is a weapon. The tunnel itself is the enemy, and you're already inside its grasp. You keep crawling, flashlight beam jittering with every movement, pistol pressed close against your chest. You don't think about how far you've come, or how far you have to go. You just move, because stopping isn't an option. The tunnel doesn't give you space to rest, and your nerves don't give you space to breathe. Forward is survival. Forward is the only direction that exists now, and with every inch you cover, the darkness feels less like a place and more like something alive, wrapping tighter around your body, pressing into your lungs, waiting to see how long you can last before it finally swallows you whole. The first thing that hits you when you crawl down isn't the silence. It isn't even the dark. It's the smell. The kind of smell that doesn't just reach your nose, but wraps around your whole body, crawls into your lungs, and lingers in your clothes long after you've come back up. The tunnels breathe it out like an exhale, and you can't escape it. You taste it with every swallow, feel it in the back of your throat, and sometimes you wake up hours later still gagging on it, even when you're lying outside under the trees. It's not one smell, it's a collection, layered together into something unique to the underground. The earth itself is the bass note, wet, sour, thick with mildew, dirt that's been soaked and pressed for months, alive with moisture, mould and rot. It coats your hands, clings to your uniform, fills your mouth every time you press your face against the floor. That smell alone could make a man gag, but the tunnels add more to it. There's sweat baked into the walls, years of it. The Viet Cong lived down here, slept here, cooked here, bled here. The dirt has soaked up everything they left behind. You catch it in waves, old smoke from cooking fires, the sour tang of unwashed bodies, the ammonia bite of waste left in corners. Sometimes there's the sharp sting of fuel, from lanterns or makeshift stoves, burned into the soil itself. And sometimes there's the coppery sweetness of blood, faint but undeniable, a smell that tells you exactly how many men never made it back out. Animals add their own signature. Rats nest in the walls, their musk thick and sour. Bats cling to the ceilings, leaving piles of guano that reek of decay. Insects swarm in the damp air, carrying their own sickly odour. Once in a while you catch the unmistakable scent of something larger. A snake coiled in the shadows. Its body leaving behind a musk that makes the hair on your arms stand up. Each smell is a warning, but down here there are so many warnings that you stop knowing which ones matter. The worst part isn't even in the tunnels. It's what happens after. You crawl out, wipe the dirt from your face, and breathe the open air. But the smell follows you. It clings to your skin, soaked into your pores. You wash in streams, scrub with rags, douse yourself with whatever soap or powder you can find, and it doesn't matter. The stink stays. Men say you can tell a tunnel rat from across the camp. They carry the tunnels with them everywhere, no matter how hard they try to shake it. Food starts to taste like it. Cigarettes burn with the same bitter edge. Even clean water feels dirty when the smell's in your nose. Some men lose their appetite entirely, stomachs turning at the memory of that underground stench. Others chew gum until their jaws ache, trying to drown it in sugar and mint. Nothing works. The tunnels mark you with their smell, and once you've been down enough times, you stop fighting it. You just accept that you'll never really smell clean again. The odour seeps into memory too. Long after you've left, you'll catch a whiff of damp earth after a rainstorm, or mould in a basement, and your stomach will twist before your mind catches up. You'll be back in the tunnel for a split second, flashlight shaking in your hand, air pressing heavy against your chest. It's not just dirt and sweat anymore. It's fear. The smell carries the fear with it. The panic of being buried alive in a place that doesn't want you. That's what never leaves. You hear them before you see them. A skitter just ahead, not loud, not dramatic, just the soft scrape of claws moving over packed earth. Your light catches nothing at first, just the jittering shadows your shaking hand puts on the wall. Then the beam slides left, and 2 pinpricks flash back at you. Not bright, just dull reflections set in a wedge of whiskers and damp fur. A rat pauses, nose lifted, whiskers trembling, then slips sideways past your hand like liquid, vanishing into a crack no wider than your thumb. That's your introduction. Not gunfire, not a trap. A rat brushing your sleeve like you both belong here. You don't, and it does, and you both know it. They're everywhere. The tunnels are perfect for them. Warm, hidden, full of crumbs and scraps and places to nest. Rats move in sideways bursts, confident in the dark. Sometimes they run directly over your legs, claws ticking against your fabric as if you're just another piece of furniture. You don't flinch the second time, or the third. Not because you're brave, but because flinching means noise, and noise means attention, and attention down here is never your friend. The smell of them announces itself, even when the beam finds nothing. Musky, sour, heavy with the stink of bodies pressed together in small spaces for too long. It blends with the rest of the tunnel odours, until everything you breathe feels alive with fur and rot. You learn their rhythms like you learn the rhythm of your own heartbeat. The quick tap-tap of claws around a bend. The soft thud of a body landing from a low ledge. The scratch-scratch of teeth working at something in the dirt. There's a particular sound when they drag a stolen scrap. Wet cloth scuffing across the floor. That makes you freeze. Pistol half raised, because it mimics a boot for a heartbeat. The first time you aim centre mass at a shadow and feel the trigger begin to take up. Then the shape resolves and you curse softly into your sleeve. You put the safety back on and keep moving. You can't spend bullets on every heartbeat that isn't yours. They teach you about the tunnel without meaning to. When the rats avoid a branching passage for no obvious reason, you mark it without thinking. When they run toward a faint draft, you know a vent or exit must be somewhere ahead. When a rat appears wet in a dry passage, you expect a low pool waiting around the corner. When a rat corpse lies in a spot with no marks and no obvious trauma, you note it twice as hard and lift your light to search the ceiling and the seams for a trap you haven't recognised yet. They don't share your side, they don't salute, they don't care if you live, but they know their world. And their world is the one you crawl through now. Rats also tell you about time, fresh droppings, gnawed edges on a ration that wasn't there yesterday. New nests woven from fibres cut from someone's shirt. You read those details the way you once read street signs. It's not a talent you wanted. It's just how you live long enough to pull yourself back out. You stop thinking of them as vermin and start thinking of them as barometers. They aren't on your team, but they're not against you either. They're above such loyalties. They were here before you, and they'll be here after, indifferent as gravity. What they carry is another story. You feel the sting of a scratch that never fully closes in the humidity. You wrap it with a strip torn from a shirt sleeve and keep moving, ignoring the itch that will creep in a day later. You wash when you can, which is to say almost never. You tell yourself you won't touch your face after contact. Then you wipe sweat from your eyes, and you've already done it. You hear a guy in a different platoon spent a week shivering after a bite and came back thin as wire, but he's still crawling. Every tale has a version where someone got sick for weeks, another where someone shrugged it off, and another where someone didn't come back. You store all three in your head and keep crawling forward, because none of them change what the tunnel requires from you today. Snakes introduce themselves differently. They don't announce their weight with scuffles. They don't click and clatter. They exist as a line that shouldn't be there, a punctuation mark lying across the floor. Your light lands and the line becomes a rope, then an animal, then the detail that matters most, the head, round and heavy or narrow and long, raised or flat. Your brain flashes through pictures you've memorized without names. You do your thinking through your knees, which go still, and your breath, which slows until it barely moves your chest. If the snake lifts its head, you freeze. If it retracts, you don't assume it's leaving for your benefit. You pull back an inch at a time, careful not to let your elbows drag, and feel your spine invent a new kind of rigidity. You don't care about species down here. You care about distance and intent. A doc once showed you a pamphlet with drawings, a whole menagerie of things that could turn your day into a different kind of story. But drawings don't capture a strike at arm's length in a tunnel that squeezes your shoulders. The first time you see one coiled in a low hollow under a ledge, it looks like a loop of cable thrown carelessly aside. Then the cable breathes. Your brain accepts it as a snake a second after your hand has already moved the light off it, and then you spend a full minute not existing except as a statue with a heart that won't cooperate. You back out of that one. You back out of any you can. You don't go around picking fights with the local citizens when every square foot is a fight you didn't ask for. The stories float through the camp about snakes set deliberately in side chambers, or jars releasing something angry when disturbed. You don't know which stories are true, and which are the kind men tell to bleed off fear. You do know that snakes like the same things you do underground: steady temperature, darkness, a body's length of space that no one intrudes on for hours. And they have nothing to prove. In the tunnels there's no dramatic warning, no rattling or display. There's just an instant where nothing moves, and an instant where something does. And you hope you're not occupying the same small geography when the line moves faster than your light. Your boots become rituals because of them. Before you slide your feet in, you snap the soles together and slap the sides. You tilt them upside down and shake. You learn this the same way everyone learns it, by watching someone not do it, then watching the way he jumps and shouts, then watching the medic work on a foot turned into a balloon. The tunnel doesn't forgive shortcuts, it uses them. You add seconds to every task, because seconds spent now are hours you don't spend with your leg propped up while the world crawls by without you. Scorpions prefer a surprise, delivered quietly. They fit inside a clasped palm. They disappear into creases and seams. They're points of punctuation with opinions about your evening. You find them in rolled sleeves and under canteen straps, and in the lip of your pack. They don't announce themselves with a look. They give you a lesson. The sting doesn't always look like much. The pain tells a different story. It blooms hot and wide, a red tide under the skin that makes your hand feel twice its size. You ride it out. Most stings are misery, not evacuation. You learn to breathe through the pulse that makes your fingers clench on their own. You take inventory after. How's the throat? How's the tongue? How's the breath? You wait. You feel ridiculous because you're measuring your own body like a piece of equipment you're responsible for. And then you remember that's exactly what it is. They pick good hiding places. Under a lip of clay. In a knot of roots. Inside the rolled cuff of a sock you thought was safe because you stuffed it into your pack yourself. You realise safety in the jungle is a temporary opinion shared by a temporary set of facts. You check again. You always check again. You never get it down to 0. You get it down to manageable. Rats, snakes, scorpions, those are the headliners. But the supporting cast does its work with enthusiasm. There's a centipede that looks like a string of articulated nightmares, red and black and longer than your hand, that can turn your shin into a map of fire for a day. There's a spider you don't see because its legs are the exact colour of the dirt, and you only learn its location after you feel the bite, and your skin flares, and your thoughts go off their tracks for a while. There are ants that don't understand proportion and will swarm anything that has the bad up manners to be still for more than a minute. They march through the tunnels like an army that never sleeps, filing past your elbow with the indifference of a crowd ignoring a stranded stranger on a city sidewalk. Bats hang above in pockets where the ceiling lifts just enough to give them space, and sometimes a rush of wings explodes over your head, and you duck, body deciding to protect your face, even as your brain reminds you there is nowhere to go. You can't wage war on all of them. You're not here for them anyway. You're here for people who built this lattice of earth to outweight you. The animals are part of the place, the way humidity is part of it, and darkness is part of it, and the dirt is part of it. You stop taking it personally when something crawls over your wrist. You have a reaction, and then you file it under expected, and you keep the pistol pointed where it needs to point. You remind yourself that spending a magazine on a rat is worse than silly. It's dangerous. Noise is a signal. You need quiet like you need air. Sometimes, though, the quiet shatters without your permission. A rat bursts from a hole under your palm right as you shift your weight and you slam your elbow into the wall hard enough to send a wave through the ceiling dust. Or a scorpion meets the heel of your hand, and your body yanks back in a panic that has nothing to do with strategy. You scrape your shoulders, your knees, your thighs. The tunnel takes its taxing skin. You breathe through it the way you breathe through the long crawl. The only way out is through the next inch. There's no elegant version of it. Above ground, everyone becomes an expert at preventing all of it. Shake boots, untie sleeves, tap the flashlight before you pocket it. Keep food sealed because rats learn the smell of your pack in 1 hour, and then the food becomes an invitation you can't afford to send. Keep packs off the ground if you can. Roll your socks tight. Check the rolled socks again. Everyone shares the same handful of tricks, like they're secret recipes. You hear a new one every week and try it once. You keep the ones that fit your habits and discard the ones that slow you down or demand you have 3 hands. You become a collector of small precautions, and your body becomes a list of places where one failed. What doesn't leave is the awareness that you share this space. Even when the flashlight shows nothing moving, you feel the life in the walls. The packed clay is honeycombed with tunnels inside the tunnel, roots and cracks and channels worn by things that live here. Your hand passes inches away, and they pause, and then they continue their business after you go by. You carry the knowledge like you carry your knife, close, because it keeps you from doing something stupid. When you reach into a dark corner to pull yourself forward, you don't just think about sharp metal and tripwires. You think about a coiled line that looks like a rope until the rope changes its mind. You test with the back of your fingers. You move the light. You do not rush the places your eyes can't explain yet. Some nights, the animals come up into the edges of camp. Rats cruise the perimeter like business owners inspecting storefronts. A snake glides through the grass with a confidence you envy. Someone shouts. Someone else throws a stick and hits nothing. You want to laugh, and you don't. Your humour lives under the same rules now. Quiet, efficient, pointed only where it helps. You keep your boots upside down. You tape the edge of your cot like that will stop a creature that can climb a brick wall. You sleep anyway because sleep is a bill that comes due with compound interest, and the jungle collects. There's a moment most days when your perspective tilts. You realise you're resenting an animal for acting like an animal. The rat is trying to live. The scorpion is defending the place where it hides because hiding is the only plan it has. The snake doesn't want to waste a bite on a thing that can't be swallowed, but it will if it has to. Your presence demands they pick a tactic. You don't take it as an insult. You take it as calculus. You adapt because adapting is cheaper than bleeding. Some men keep a kind of peace with it. They stop reacting when a rat runs across their shoulder like a bridge. They flick a scorpion off a strap with the same caution they use to lift a hot pot and carry on. They become students of movement. Once you can predict the path an animal wants to take, you can remove yourself from that path. You aren't conquering the tunnel. You're practicing traffic control in a place without signs. There's also the other kind of day. You turn a corner, and your light finds a knot of bodies in a wall dip, fur and tails and eyes. The entire floor seems to move. You make a sound you don't make anywhere else, a sound that doesn't belong to any language you speak, and then you bite it back because you're not alone in the tunnel in the only way that matters. You reverse without hurry, and your heart tries to exit through your throat. And you mark the wall with a chalk X you will absolutely remember, even if the rain erases it in an hour. You find a different passage because today you don't need that one. Bravery is not the same thing as recklessness, and anyone who can't tell the difference gets a short tour and a quiet ceremony. You don't romanticize any of it. There's nothing noble about sharing your workspace with a set of creatures that overflow the boundaries of your comfort. You do, though, recognize the truth that lands in your chest about 2 weeks into this work. The tunnel was made by hands, but it belongs to all the things that decided it was useful. The enemy dug it, the animals claimed it, you visit. You try not to leave anything behind except the marks you're ordered to leave. And even those marks, the chalk lines, the scuffs, the fingerprints, get absorbed by the place. By tomorrow the rats have walked through them, and the scorpions have nested near them, and the snakes have passed over them without caring. The tunnel edits your presence. Hands find a rhythm, even with all of it. Left, right, elbow, knee, push, pause, listen. The routine is a blanket you pull over your nerves. It doesn't keep out the cold of fear, but it lets you function under it. You place the pistol where it won't catch. You shift the light to the edge so you can watch the floor and the seam where wall meets ceiling at the same time. You learn to keep the beam down and aim your attention up because the floor bites, but the ceiling surprises. You carry the knowledge of animals in your fingers. This texture means old nest. This line is a shed skin. This smell is not the tunnel's normal soup. Sometimes you get lucky and your presence scatters everything in front of you. The rats flow away and don't come back. The scorpions vanish into their punctuation marks. The snakes decide the left-hand corridor is their corridor, and them leaving opens the right-hand one for you. Other times you get the forever standoff. A snake refuses to yield the only path. You consider. You unsling nothing. You make a choice both your training and your instincts can live with. You back up half a body length and wait. Down here, patience is a tool too. It costs less than stitches. The longer you do this, the more your body internalizes the tunnel's negotiations. Your hands glide just above the floor instead of dragging across it. Your knees find the low spots that spare your kneecaps an extra bruise. Your arms pull you forward and pause instead of lurching into the next blind space. You could call it skill if you wanted to feel good about yourself. Mostly it's stubbornness. You refuse to give the tunnel the satisfaction of making you clumsy. You refuse to give the animals extra reasons to react. You appear calm. Inside, things rattle, but the rattle stays inside, and sometimes that's enough. You think of the people who built these networks, and you try to picture how they shared the space with the same creatures. You imagine a cooking corner with steam rolling up and rats waiting just out of reach. You imagine a sleeping trench and a snake sliding along the edge in the heat of the day, while someone turns over and the two occupants avoid each other by inches. You imagine a scorpion under a woven mat. It helps to remember none of this is personal. The animals didn't arrive to punish you. They arrive because the conditions you hate are perfect for them. You're the wrong species in the right habitat. That's the sentence that makes sense of it when your nerves hum like wire. There's one more fact that rides along with you as steadily as the pistol grip. Everything down here breathes the same air. You, the rats, the scorpions tucked into cracks, the snakes coiled in the cool places. You're all pulling oxygen from a space that doesn't have much to spare. When enough bodies share a small compartment, the air goes soft at the edges. It thickens. Your chest starts to lift and fall a little faster without permission. Your light picks out the slight haze hanging in front of you, and your tongue tastes stale copper. You aim your beam at the flame of your lighter for half a second, and watch which way the flame leans. Then you pocket it fast, because every breath counts. You don't say anything out loud about the math happening in your lungs. You just file it with the rest. The way the rats are moving, the fact that you haven't seen a scorpion in a few minutes, the absence of a certain kind of scratching, and keep pressing forward through a place where every living thing is making the same quiet request. Air. Just a little more air. You don't notice it at first. You're too focused on the scrape of your elbows, the pistol digging into your ribs, the flicker of the flashlight against a dirt wall. But after a few minutes, it creeps in. Your chest feels heavier than it should. Breaths come shorter, shallower, and you realise the tunnel isn't just dark and narrow. It's stealing the air too. The first instinct is to breathe deeper, like you do when you're winded on the surface. Down here, that makes it worse. The air doesn't refill your lungs the way it should. It's thick, stale, clotted with moisture, and the smoke of fires burned long ago. Every inhale tastes like rust and mildew. You cough, the sound too loud, bouncing off the walls and coming back at you like someone else is coughing just behind your ear. The tunnels weren't designed for you. They were built by men used to crouching low, men who knew how to stretch a single pocket of oxygen across hours. Some chambers had vents, narrow shafts disguised on the surface as anthills or covered with brush, but even those only gave the bare minimum. The rest of the passages sit heavy and stagnant, the air unmoving, as if it's been waiting decades for someone foolish enough to disturb it. You breathe it in anyway, because there's no choice. The damp makes it worse. The walls sweat, beads of water rolling down into little pools at your knees. The humidity wraps around you like a wet blanket. Your uniform soaks through in minutes, sweat clinging to your skin, refusing to evaporate. You can feel your body overheating, even as the tunnel keeps its constant chill. Your lungs don't care about temperature. They care about oxygen, and there isn't enough. You take shallower breaths, quick sips instead of gulps. That's what the older rats told you. Don't waste your lungs trying to pull more than the tunnel will give. Save your strength. Move slowly. Let your body adjust. But your nerves don't listen. They demand more air. They demand wide open lungs. And every time you resist, panic scratches at the edges of your mind. It tells you you're suffocating, that the next inhale will bring nothing, that the earth above you is already sealing shut. The lighter test becomes ritual. You flick the wheel, shielding the small flame with your hand. If it burns steady, you exhale in relief. If it gutters sideways, you adjust your direction. If it dies outright, you know the air is thin enough to kill. You close the lid quickly, pocket it, because every second of flame is a second of oxygen burned. You hope you have enough sense to turn back before the weakness hits your muscles, before the dizziness fogs your vision, before your brain decides the only thing left to do is shut off. Sometimes the air carries more than damp and mould. It carries smoke from cooking fires deeper in the complex, a haze that stings your eyes and burns your throat. You feel it coating your tongue, a bitter film that makes water taste like ash when you finally drink again. Sometimes it carries gas, not always deliberate, just fumes from fuel or rotting food, heavy and invisible. You don't see it until your head aches and your stomach churns. And sometimes it carries death itself. The smell of bodies buried shallow in the walls. Skin and bone melting into the dirt, releasing gases that ride straight into your lungs. You don't need to see them to know they're close. The air tells you. Your ears ring with your own breathing. Every inhale, every exhale amplified in the silence. You try to slow it, to make it quiet, but the effort makes you think about it more. You can't ignore breathing in the tunnels. It becomes your whole world, the rhythm of survival, the measure of how far you can crawl before turning back. You don't listen for footsteps or whispers first. You listen to your own lungs, counting how long before they betray you. You've seen men come back up gasping, faces grey, eyes bloodshot, spitting up bile while medics slap their backs. You've seen others dragged out limp, their lips blue, because they pushed too far into air that wasn't meant for breathing. You know the signs, the dizziness, the tingling in your fingers, the sudden rush of panic that says, turn around now or die here. And yet, every time you go down, you push further than feels safe, because the mission demands it. because the squad above needs answers. Because saying no isn't an option. You wonder sometimes if this is what drowning feels like. Not the rush of water into your lungs, but the steady knowledge that every breath is thinner than the last, that you're surviving in fractions, counting each inhale like a borrowed coin, that the world around you doesn't care if you run out, the tunnel doesn't need you, the air doesn't need you. They'll settle back into silence the moment you stop moving. And so you keep crawling, each breath heavier, each exhale louder, the taste of mould and rust thick on your tongue. The pistol presses into your chest, the flashlight flickers in your grip, and you wonder if the next chamber will bring more air or take away what little you still have. The air presses in on you, thick and damp, but it isn't the hardest part. What really works on your nerves is the silence. Not the kind you get on a quiet morning back home, with birds in the distance, or wind moving through trees. This silence is different. It's total. It sits heavy in the tunnel, pushing into your ears until you start hearing things that aren't there. You stop crawling for a moment, pistol close to your chest, light trained ahead, and all you can hear is your own breathing. Inhale, exhale, the scrape of fabric shifting with your chest. It sounds too loud, too obvious, like an alarm bell telling the world exactly where you are. You try to slow it, hold it, control it, but the more you think about breathing, the more awkward it feels. You suck in air in short bursts, and the tunnel throws it back at you, each breath bouncing off the walls as if someone else is copying you from the darkness. Even the smallest sounds become distorted. A drop of water falling from the ceiling splashes into a puddle no bigger than your palm, but down here it rings out like a stone tossed into a well. A rat scuttles along a side passage, and it sounds like boot running just beyond the edge of your light. You tap your finger against your pistol grip without meaning to, and the sharp click echoes down the passage, stretching into a hollow metallic clang that makes you freeze. The tunnel makes a liar out of every sound. Nothing is ever what it seems. You listen harder because silence here doesn't mean safety. It means waiting. The Viet Cong know these tunnels better than anyone, and they use silence the same way you use your flashlight. They let it hang, let it work on you, until your nerves are stretched thin. You expect to hear a cough, a shuffle, a whisper of movement, anything to tell you they're ahead, but there's nothing. And nothing becomes unbearable. Your own heartbeat fills the void. It thumps in your ears, a low, heavy drum that refuses to quiet. Every beat feels loud enough to carry down the tunnel. You press your chest against the floor to steady yourself, trying to believe the dirt will swallow the sound. It doesn't. You still hear it, pounding harder the longer you crawl. You think about the men who said they could hear their pulse in the silence until it drove them half mad. You wonder if you're heading that way yourself. Sometimes you think you hear whispers, faint, low, carried through the soil itself. You stop, hold your breath, tilt your head toward the wall. Was that a voice? Was that the scrape of someone shifting ahead? You wait, counting the seconds, your hand tight on the pistol. Then nothing. Just the silence, settling back over you, heavier than before, mocking the way you jumped. You move again, unsure if you imagined it, or if they're just that good at waiting. The silence plays tricks on time. Minutes stretch until they feel like hours. Crawling 10 feet feels like crossing a city. You measure progress by breaths, by the ache in your knees, by the weight of dirt collecting in your boots. There's no rhythm to it, no external marker to tell you how far you've gone. Just the endless hush, broken only by your own movement. You start to believe you'll crawl forever, swallowed by a place where even the air refuses to make a sound. And when something does finally break it, a crack, a cough, the snap of a twig above, it doesn't feel like relief. It feels like a hammer blow. The silence has been so complete that any sound comes as an explosion, and you flinch, heart hammering, convinced it's the moment you've been waiting for. The moment that will decide if you crawl out alive or not at all. The silence makes you uneasy, but what makes you slow your crawl to half the pace is the knowledge of what could be waiting ahead. Not a person, not an animal, not even the earth itself. The tunnels are littered with traps. Small, cruel devices designed to punish you for daring to crawl where you don't belong. And the worst part is, they're built to vanish into the dark until the moment you find them the hard way. You keep the flashlight low, scanning the floor, the walls, the ceiling. Every inch could hold something. A thin tripwire stretched ankle high, invisible until your hand brushes it. A sharpened stake angled down from the ceiling, waiting for a helmet or a skull. A pit hidden under loose soil, narrow but deep enough to swallow a body. Sometimes it's as simple as a grenade wired to a door frame, pin-pulled, waiting for pressure to do the rest. Sometimes it's more primitive, but no less effective. A bamboo stake smeared with filth, set to pierce skin and poison blood in a single motion. You've seen what they do. You've seen men come out with their arms slashed open, blood mixing with dirt as medics scramble to keep infection from spreading. You've seen ankles shredded, chests punctured, bellies torn by spikes that don't look like much, until you realise they were placed at just the right height to hit where armour doesn't cover. You've heard the stories about men crawling forward only to vanish in a muffled blast, the tunnel collapsing around them, their bodies never recovered. The traps don't just wound, they kill, and when they don't, they make sure you never stop remembering them. Your hands move cautiously now. You slide your palm forward before your body, brushing the dirt gently, searching for the faintest resistance. The tips of your fingers probe the walls, feeling for wire or grooves. Your light sweeps slow arcs across the ceiling, searching for anything that looks too deliberate, too straight, too clean against the natural curves of the earth. You sweat harder, but you ignore it. Sweat is nothing. One mistake, 1 inch too careless, and you'll never crawl again. The cruelty of the traps is in their simplicity. A sharpened stick doesn't need a battery. A wire doesn't need training. A grenade buried in the dirt doesn't need precision. The Viet Cong built them from what they had, and they worked because they didn't need to be complicated. They only needed to be invisible. And down here, invisible is easy. Sometimes you can smell the trap before you see it. The sour stench of bamboo, sharpened and dipped in waste. The faint chemical tang of explosive packed into a corner. Sometimes the air feels wrong, heavier, disturbed, like the tunnel itself is warning you. You learn to trust that instinct, because ignoring it has cost lives. The traps don't just sit and wait. They're placed with intent, at choke points where you can't crawl around them, at corners where you're forced to turn, in chambers just big enough for you to stand, baiting you into relaxing. Every time you find one, you know someone thought about you before you ever set foot here. They imagined where you'd crawl, where your hand would fall, where your helmet would scrape the ceiling. The trap isn't just a device, it's a message. Someone knew you would come, and they planned for it. Your nerves fray at the edges as you crawl. Every root brushing your hand feels like wire. Every shadow across the floor looks like a trip line. Your mind invents traps where there aren't any, and in a way, that's the point. Even when there's nothing, you crawl as if the dirt itself might bite you. The tunnel slows you, not just with its narrow walls, but with the constant suspicion that the next inch forward could be your last. You don't talk about the traps much above ground. There's no need. Everyone knows. Everyone's heard the stories. And when your name is called to crawl, you don't think about whether you'll face an enemy soldier. You think about the dirt hiding sharpened bamboo. You think about a wire stretched thinner than a hair. You think about the sound of a muffled blast and the cave-in that follows. And then you go anyway, because going is the job. It doesn't matter how many times you've gone down. The feeling never changes. The tunnel wraps around you, pressing into your shoulders, scraping the top of your helmet, squeezing your chest until every breath feels like it has to fight its way in. Claustrophobia isn't a fear anymore. It's just part of the job. Something you consume the same way you consume the canned rations, the lukewarm water, the endless sweat. You don't get to choose whether you want it or not. It's handed out daily, and you take it, because survival doesn't care what you're afraid of. The first squeeze always hits hardest. When the walls narrow so tightly that your elbows grind against dirt and your knees jam into the floor, your body reacts before your mind can stop it. Your chest tightens, your heart slams faster, your throat narrows as if the tunnel is already filling with dirt. You have to fight the urge to push backward, to scramble for the entrance you can't even see anymore. You tell yourself there's space, that you're not trapped, but your body doesn't believe it. The tunnel is too close, and the thought presses down harder than the earth itself. You hear your own breath echoing in the dark, too quick, too shallow, and you try to force it slower. One inhale, hold, one exhale, hold. But the silence makes each one sound louder, sharper, until you're sure someone must hear you from a mile away. Sweat beads on your forehead, runs into your eyes, stings as you blink it away. The dirt sticks to your lips, and you taste it when you breathe in. Every sense screams that you don't belong here, that no human should be crawling in a place this small, this tight, this unforgiving. Some men never get past that first squeeze. They make it 10 feet in, 20, before the tunnel narrows and the air thickens, and their bodies lock. Their arms shake, their vision blurs, and the panic takes over. You've seen them dragged out, gasping and wild-eyed, their uniforms torn from clawing at the dirt. They don't go back in. Nobody blames them out loud, but everyone knows the truth. This job doesn't forgive claustrophobia. If it owns you, the tunnel will take you. For the ones who keep going, the fear doesn't vanish. It just shifts. It sits under your skin like a slow-burning fire, always ready to flare when the ceiling dips lower or the walls close tighter. You get used to it the same way you get used to blisters or rashes. It hurts, it scares you, but you learn to function under it. You crawl with your chest pressed flat, pistol jammed under your ribs, flashlight wobbling in your grip, and the thought that you could get stuck never fully leaves. You swallow it with every breath, like another ration you didn't ask for. You learn tricks to keep it manageable. Don't think about distance. Don't think about how many feet of earth rest above you. Focus on inches. Focus on the next elbow, the next knee, the next push forward. Break the crawl into pieces so small your brain can accept them. You hum quietly sometimes, not a song, just a vibration to remind yourself you still control your own voice. You count breaths, not to calm down, but to measure progress. 10 breaths forward, then 10 more. You tell yourself if you can make it through the next set, you'll be fine. And then you keep lying to yourself until you reach daylight again. The tunnel never gives you space to sit up, stretch, or breathe deeply. You dream of it sometimes, of standing upright, arms wide, lungs full. But down here, dreams are useless. The walls are your constant company, brushing your shoulders, pressing into your thighs, scraping your back. You don't just fight enemies in the tunnels. You fight the earth itself. And the earth always has the advantage. What wears you down isn't just the moment of panic. It's the endless repetition. Every day, every crawl, the same squeeze, the same heavy silence, the same ration of fear shoved into your chest. You expect it, and that expectation becomes its own kind of torture. Before you even lower yourself into the entrance, you feel it waiting for you. You breathe fresh air above ground, but already your throat is tightening, your skin crawling, because you know what's coming. Claustrophobia doesn't stay behind in the tunnel. It climbs out with you, sits on your shoulders, and waits for the next order to go back down, to go back. You tell yourself over and over that the tunnels are empty, that the silence means you're alone, that the only thing waiting for you is more dirt, more sweat, more suffocating dark. But sooner or later, the moment comes when the tunnel proves you wrong. When the light cuts across something that isn't just wall or root or rat. When you find yourself not in theory but in truth, face to face with another man who has been waiting in the same black silence. It never happens the way you expect. There's no cinematic pause, no drawn-out standoff. 1 second, you're crawling forward, the sound of your own breath filling your head. The next second, there's movement in the shadows ahead. The flick of an eye reflecting your light, the twitch of a hand, the shift of a body pressed against the wall. You don't think about it before it happens. You don't prepare. You just react. The tunnel is too tight for distance. There's no room to line up a shot, no space to maneuver. You're elbow to elbow with the earth, and now with him. The pistol in your hand feels both too heavy and too clumsy. You can feel his breath mixing with yours in the stale air, the two of you locked together in a space barely big enough for one. The sound of your heartbeat drowns out everything else. Sometimes it's a scramble, both of you lunging in the dark, dirt flying as elbows and knees crash against walls. The pistol kicks in your hand, the flash blinding both of you, the noise deafening in the confined space. You don't remember pulling the trigger, only the smell of burned powder mixing with sweat and mould. Sometimes it isn't even the gun. Sometimes it's the knife, blade flashing in the narrow cone of light, bodies tangled in mud and roots until one stops moving. There's nothing clean about it, nothing precise. It's survival stripped down to the ugliest parts of being human. And sometimes it's quieter. You round a corner and there he is, crouched low, eyes catching the beam of your light. For a half second you both freeze, staring at each other in the silence. Neither of you wants to be here. Neither of you asked for this. But there's no time for thought. That half second is the only gift the tunnel gives. And then it's gone. The stories from men who've been through it all blend together in your mind. One guy swears he felt the barrel of a rifle press against his chest before his own pistol went off first. Another says he locked eyes with a man no older than a teenager, so close he could see the dirt in his fingernails before he fired. Others talk about grappling in complete darkness after their flashlights went dead, nothing but hands and teeth and desperation deciding who would crawl out alive. You don't know which details are true and which are ghosts carried out of the tunnels, but you know the fear in their voices is real. You don't get distance in these fights. You don't get cover. You don't get second chances. Voice to face means everything collapses into seconds, into inches. The difference between living and dying isn't strategy, it's instinct. And the tunnel doesn't care which one of you walks out. It just absorbs the noise, swallows the bodies, and settles back into silence as if nothing happened at all. And when it's over, when you're the one still crawling, the silence doesn't return the way it used to. It sits heavier now, thicker, carrying the memory of breath that wasn't yours, of eyes that met yours in the dark. You keep moving forward because you have to, but the knowledge stays pressed against your skin. You've met the enemy below, and you know it'll happen again. The dirt is always moving, even when you can't see it. You press your elbows into the floor, drag yourself forward, and feel the faint shiver as soil shifts just slightly under your weight. The walls crumble in flecks when your shoulders brush against them. The ceiling sheds a fine dust whenever your helmet scrapes too close. You tell yourself it's nothing, that the tunnel's been here for years, that if it was going to give way it would have already. But the thought never leaves. Every crawl feels like one wrong movement away from the earth deciding to bury you. You know what collapse looks like? You've seen the aftermath above ground, where an entrance caved in and left nothing but a crater, the tunnel sealed under tons of dirt. You've heard stories of men caught inside when the ceiling fell, their screams muffled almost instantly, the rescue attempt abandoned because digging would only bring more cave-ins. No gunfire, no explosion, just silence and a mound of fresh soil marking where someone stopped existing. The tunnel doesn't have to fight you. It just has to wait. Every sound becomes suspect. A low groan in the walls might be a root shifting, or it might be the ceiling settling under the weight above. A faint trickle of soil down your neck makes your body stiffen, breath catching as you imagine the entire passage giving way. Sometimes you hear distant booms, artillery pounding the ground overhead, and the tunnel vibrates like a drum. Dust rains down, and you hold yourself flat, pressing into the mud, waiting for the world to decide whether it's finished with you or not. The Viet Cong built these tunnels quickly, with whatever tools they had. Shovels, hands, baskets for hauling dirt. They braced sections with bamboo, but bamboo rots in the damp, eaten by insects, snapped by the weight of wet earth. You crawl past beams split and splintered, leaning at angles that make you duck lower. Each one feels like a coin toss. Will it hold another hour, another day, or will it snap the moment you trust it? You don't stop to test. You just crawl faster, even though moving fast makes more noise, and noise can kill you just as surely as collapse. Your body reacts before your mind. A groan overhead makes your shoulders hunch. A crack in the wall makes your heart pound so hard it hurts. Every nerve is tuned to the possibility of being crushed in silence, with no chance to fight back. You can handle the idea of an enemy. You can grip the pistol, flick the flashlight, brace yourself to strike. But how do you fight the earth itself? There's no weapon, no plan, just luck. And luck runs thin when you spend it every day. The thought creeps in while you crawl. If it happens now, no one will even know where you are. The tunnel twists and turns, branches into dead ends. Swallows sound whole. You could be 10 feet below your squad, and they'd never hear a thing. You'd just vanish. The earth would close, and the war would keep going above without you. That's the kind of knowledge you try not to dwell on, but it's impossible to ignore when a pebble drops beside your hand, or the ceiling sags just slightly under the weight of roots. Every collapse is invisible until it isn't. That's the truth you carry with every inch forward. And so you crawl, slower, quieter, never forgetting that the tunnel itself is your enemy, and that at any moment it might decide you've overstayed your welcome. You stop crawling, and the first thing you notice isn't what you see, it's what you hear. Or rather, what you're trying to hear. In the tunnels, sight never comes first. The flashlight beam can only reach so far, the dirt walls eat light whole, and shadows breed faster than you can chase them. Hearing becomes the sense you lean on, the one that tells you what might be waiting ahead. You press your ear close to the wall, and you listen, trying to separate the noises of the earth from the noises of men. The dirt carries sound in ways that open air never does. Vibrations move through soil, through bamboo beams, through roots. A single step above ground can thud through the ceiling like a drum. A whispered word from deeper inside can sliver down a passage and brush against your ear like breath. You hold still, lungs tight, trying to tell the difference between rats scurrying through cracks and the cautious shuffle of human feet. It isn't easy. The tunnel lies to you. Dripping water echoes like footsteps. A collapsing clump of soil hisses like a whispered command. Even your own heartbeat pulses into the dirt, tricking your nerves into thinking someone else is moving nearby. You learn to filter, to wait longer, to let the sound settle until patterns show themselves. Rats move quick, irregular, sharp. Men move slower, measured, with pauses that stretch too evenly. It takes practice to know the difference, but practice only comes in the middle of the job, where mistakes mean more than embarrassment. The sound of tools is clearer. A scrape of metal against rock. A dull thud of dirt being shifted. You've caught it before. Faint but unmistakable. And it told you someone was expanding the tunnels even as you crawled through them. The war isn't static underground. The network grows, twists, reshapes itself day by day. Every sound of digging is proof that the enemy is close, working in the dark just like you, only with the advantage of being at home. Sometimes the sounds are obvious. A cough, a muttered voice, the metallic click of a weapon being shifted. The moment you hear them, your pulse spikes, and you raise the pistol, light cutting forward. But you don't rush. The tunnels punish rushing. You wait, ears straining, counting the seconds between noises. Was it one man or several? Was it deliberate, meant to draw you forward, or just carelessness in the dark? Every decision starts with what you hear, and sometimes you hear nothing at all, and that's worse. Silence isn't safety here. Silence is a weapon. It means someone knows you're there, and they're waiting, patient, just as still as you are. You picture them crouched in the dark, finger on the trigger, listening for your next elbow scraping forward. The silence grows heavier the longer it lasts, pressing into your chest until you start to believe you can hear their heartbeat mixing with yours. Your ear stays close to the dirt. You close your eyes, shutting out the beam of light, trusting only what the earth tells you. You wait for the faintest shift, the smallest vibration, the tiniest giveaway that separates the living enemy from the tunnel's background noise. Down here, listening isn't just part of the job. Listening is survival. You never trust the flashlight, no matter how tightly you hold it. It's the one tool you depend on most, the single thread keeping you from absolute blindness, and that's exactly why it feels so fragile in your hand. The beam is weak to begin with, narrow and jittering, cutting just a small slice into the dark ahead. The bulb is scratched, the casing dented, the battery's always closer to dying than you want to admit. You flick it on and off before every crawl, watching the light sputter, telling yourself it will hold. Deep down, you know it won't. When the light dies, it doesn't give you warning. Sometimes it flickers once, twice, like a nervous breath, and then the tunnel swallows you whole. Sometimes it just snaps out instantly, plunging you into black so complete it feels physical, a blanket thrown over your head and shoulders. The first reaction is always the same. Your chest locks, your throat closes, your body demands you panic. Your hands claw at the flashlight, shaking it, slapping it against your palm, praying the beam will come back. You promise anything in those seconds. Just one more flicker, one more chance, but sometimes the light doesn't return, and then you're left in it, the purest dark you've ever known. Not the kind you find in a bedroom at night, with street lamps leaking through the window or the glow of a clock in the corner. This dark is absolute. You hold your hand in front of your face and see nothing. You blink, and the world doesn't change. The black presses against your eyes until they ache, straining for light that doesn't exist. The tunnel becomes a different place in that dark. The air feels thicker, heavier, as if it knows you're blind. Every sound is sharper. The scrape of your elbow against dirt sounds like an explosion. The drip of water overhead echoes like footsteps. Your own breathing roars in your ears, impossible to quiet. You freeze, trying to separate what's real from what your mind invents. But the dark feeds imagination faster than reason. Shapes move in your head, things you can't see but swear are just inches away. You start crawling by touch, one hand pressed against the wall, feeling the damp clay under your fingers. The other gripping the pistol, held tight against your chest because you're terrified of losing it in the black. Your knees shuffle forward, slow, deliberate, each movement sending tremors through the dirt. You feel the tunnel more than you move through it now, the ridges in the floor, the roots cutting across the ceiling, the shifts in width that tell you whether you're entering a chamber or being funneled tighter. The problem is, you can't check for traps anymore. No flashlight means no chance of spotting the thin line of wire across the ground, no way to see the glint of metal hidden in a wall. You rely on your fingertips, brushing the floor before you crawl into it, probing ahead like a blind man feeling out the world. It slows you down to a crawl even slower than usual, every inch demanding more courage than you thought you had left. And the worst part is knowing that someone else could be in the dark with you. You'll never hear them until they're too close. You'll never see the eyes staring back, never see the barrel of the rifle waiting just beyond arm's reach. You imagine them crouched silently, watching you fumble forward, waiting for the right second to move. The idea is enough to freeze your body in place, forehead pressed to the dirt, too afraid to take another inch. Men come back shaken from those crawls. Some swear they heard whispers. Others felt hands brushing their legs when no one was there. You don't know if the dark is really full of ghosts, or if the brain just invents them when it has nothing else to hold on to. But you know one truth. When the flashlight fails, the tunnel owns you completely. When you finally crawl back toward the surface, the first touch of daylight feels unreal. Your hands push against the lip of the entrance, dirt falling away as your head rises into open air. For a moment, your lungs forget how to work. You suck in a breath that's wide and full, and it burns in your chest because it's too much all at once. After hours of stale, thin, suffocating air, the sky tastes like water poured down a dry throat. You cough, choke, laugh in a way that isn't really laughter, and keep pulling more into your body until you're dizzy from it. The jungle greets you with sound again. Insects buzzing, birds screeching, the distant thud of artillery. Noise that once grated now feels like proof that the world above hasn't vanished while you were buried alive. You blink in the sunlight, squinting as your eyes struggle to adjust, the brightness stabbing into your skull after so long in the dark. Men slap your back, not in celebration but in relief. You're up, you're breathing. For now, that's enough. You sit on the ground, sweat pouring off you, clothes soaked and streaked with mud, hands trembling so hard you can barely keep hold of the pistol. Your chest heaves like you've run a marathon, though you barely moved more than a few dozen yards underground. The effort wasn't in distance. It was in surviving the air, the traps, the silence, the weight of the earth pressing on every side. You feel like you've aged years in the span of a crawl. Someone hands you a canteen, and you drink greedily, the water warm but still better than the taste of the mould and dust that's been coating your tongue. It runs down your chin, mixes with the dirt already there, and you don't bother wiping it away. You just drink until your stomach aches, because thirst in the tunnel isn't something you ever forget. But the relief never lasts. Even while you're gulping air, your body won't let go of the memory of the tunnel. You feel the press of the walls on your shoulders even when you're sitting upright in the open. You hear phantom echoes in the back of your mind, the silence stretching thin, like it hasn't quite released you yet. Your fingers twitch, still searching the ground for tripwires that aren't there. The tunnel doesn't stay underground. It climbs back out with you, clinging like a second skin. And before long, the order comes again. The officers don't ask if you're ready. They don't give you time to recover. Another tunnel entrance is found, another dark mouth waiting to swallow someone whole, and your name is called. The canteen isn't finished, the sweat hasn't dried, and your heartbeat hasn't slowed, but it doesn't matter. You're already crawling back toward the hole, pistol checked, flashlight flicked, lungs bracing for the stale air all over again. You tell yourself the fresh breath you just had will last you, that it will carry you through the next crawl. But it never does. Every time you return, the air feels heavier, the silence deeper, the darkness thicker. Coming up for air is only ever a pause, never an escape. The tunnel always waits, and the war always pushes you back inside it. You think leaving the tunnel means leaving it behind, that once you crawl back into the open air, once the dirt shakes from your uniform, and the light stabs into your eyes again, it's over. But the body doesn't forget so easily. The tunnel doesn't stay underground. It rides with you, stitched into your skin, clinging to your clothes, sitting heavy in your bones. You carry it out whether you want to or not. Your hands are the first proof. The skin never heals the way it should. Cuts from sharp rocks, scrapes from roots, blisters from pushing forward on elbows and palms. None of them close clean. The dirt infects them, the sweat keeps them raw, and soon your hands look more like tools than flesh. You flex your fingers, and they crack, stiff and swollen, nails rimmed black with earth you'll never wash out completely. Even when you're above ground, you catch yourself rubbing your palms together, as if still trying to feel the texture of soil for traps that aren't there. Your knees tell the same story. Raw patches scab over and tear open again the next day. The fabric of your uniform is worn thin where it presses hardest, so that every crawl grinds skin against dirt like sandpaper. The ache becomes constant, the swelling permanent, until kneeling on solid ground hurts just as much as crawling in the tunnel. You stand, and your legs creak like an old door. Your muscles trained for a crouch more than a stride. The body adapts, but it adapts downward, reshaping itself for the tunnel's demands, not for your comfort. Your back bends too, shoulders rounded from days spent hunched in the dark. You feel it when you try to straighten up, a tightness that pulls like wire along your spine. At night, lying in shallow sleep, your body curls by instinct, as though expecting the ceiling to scrape against you again. The posture never leaves. Even months later, even years, men walk with that stoop, marked by the tunnels long after they've left them behind. And then there's the smell. It seeps into your pores, your hair, the fabric of your uniform. A mix of mould, sweat, waste and rot that clings no matter how many times you wash. You step into camp, and someone knows immediately. You've been below. You've brought the tunnel with you. Soap helps for a day maybe, but in the heat and humidity, the stink rises again from your skin, as if the earth itself has claimed you as part of it. Some men never lose it, even years later, catching a whiff of mildew in a basement and being dragged straight back underground. Sleep doesn't free you either. You close your eyes and find yourself crawling all over again, darkness pressing tight, air refusing to fill your lungs, the scrape of unseen roots dragging across your arms. Your dreams shrink to the size of the passage, nightmares that don't need monsters, because the tunnel itself is enough. You wake sweating, choking, clutching for a flashlight that isn't there. The dirt stays with you even when you're far from it, whispering back into your ears each time you try to rest. The tunnel writes itself into your body piece by piece, marking you in ways you don't always see until later. The cough that won't go away, lungs scarred from breathing mould and dust. The hearing dulled by shots fired in confined spaces, ears ringing long after the noise stops. The rashes that never clear, skin softened by constant damp. Each crawl carves a little more out of you, and the body keeps the record, whether you want it or not. You don't just crawl into the tunnel crawls into you. And even when you walk away, even when you stand under the sun and tell yourself it's over, you feel it moving inside, stitched into muscle and memory. The body carries it home, and it doesn't let go. The tunnel doesn't stay behind when you climb out of it. It follows you, not just in your body, but in your head. You sit in the open, sunlight on your face, the air wide and clean around you, and still the dark finds a way back in. You're surrounded by noise, helicopters chopping the sky, insects whining in the trees, men shouting orders, but your mind drifts back to the silence under the earth. You don't need to be asleep to relive it. The nightmares come in broad daylight, sliding into the edges of your thoughts when you least expect them. It can be something small that pulls you back. The way a shadow stretches under a tree. The smell of damp clothes drying in the heat. The sudden muffled thud of artillery shaking the ground. Your body reacts before your mind understands. Lungs tightening, shoulders curling, eyes scanning for walls that aren't there. You're not underground, but your body insists you are. And for a few long seconds you feel the weight of earth pressing down again, squeezing the air out of your chest. Sometimes it's worse than memory. Sometimes it's imagination filling the daylight with things you can't control. You catch yourself staring into the underbrush, convinced there are eyes staring back. You hear a cough behind you and flinch, pistol half raised, even though it's just another soldier lighting a cigarette. The brain replays moments you thought you'd buried, hands grappling in the dark, a trap snapping shut, the flashlight flickering out and it doesn't care that the sun is shining. It doesn't care that you're safe for the moment. It drags you back anyway. The nightmares don't wait for night. They don't need the cover of sleep. They live in the daylight, crouched just out of sight, waiting for a trigger to set them loose. You see other men fight the same thing. Jaws clench too tight. Hands twitching toward weapons at the smallest sound. Eyes darting to the tree line, then down to the ground, then back up again, as if expecting the tunnel to open under their boots. Everyone tries to act normal, tries to laugh, tries to shake it off, but the daylight doesn't hide what's happening. The war has carved the dark into your heads, and now it leaks out whether you want it to or not. The strangest part is how ordinary it feels after a while. You expect the jolts, the sudden flashbacks, the choking panic that grips your lungs in the middle of a conversation. You stop fighting it because it's easier to let it wash over you and wait for it to fade. You learn to mask it, to keep talking, to pretend the sunlight is enough to keep you steady. But underneath, the nightmares keep crawling, reminding you that the tunnel doesn't need darkness to own you. It can reach you anywhere. The war ends on paper, but the tunnels never close. You carry them with you long after you've left the jungle behind. The world expects you to step off the plane, breathe clean air, walk down familiar streets, and be whole again. But the darkness doesn't leave when the uniform comes off. It lingers in the corners of quiet rooms, in the spaces under stairwells, in basements where the air is too still. You tell yourself you're safe, but your body doesn't believe it. It stiffens at shadows, curls when ceilings press too low, flinches when silence grows too heavy. You try to explain it once, maybe twice, but words don't stretch far enough. People imagine combat in open fields, rifles and explosions, not hours of crawling through dirt with a pistol in one hand and a dying flashlight in the other. They don't know what it does to you to be buried alive again and again, to measure your life in inches of progress, to fight enemies close enough to taste the same stale air. So you stop talking. You hold it inside, and the tunnels stay private, shared only with the men who lived them too. Your body carries the marks, knees that never heal right, lungs that wheeze in damp weather, ears that ring in silence, scars from traps, from roots, from your own fingernails clawing against the walls when panic closed in. The doctor calls them injuries. You know better. They're reminders. They're proof that part of you is still underground, still crawling. The mind carries more. Sleep is never clean. Darkness is never harmless. You wake choking in bright rooms, convinced the air is running out. You step into crowds and feel the press of bodies as if the walls are closing again. You duck under door frames out of habit, stooping like the ceiling is inches from your skull. You catch yourself holding your breath in elevators, counting seconds the way you used to count them between tunnels. These things don't fade. They become part of you, stitched into the way you live. And yet, somehow, life goes on. You get jobs, you sit at tables, you drink coffee in kitchens that smell nothing like mildew and rot. You smile when people ask, and most days you even mean it. But under the surface, the darkness waits, never gone, only quiet. The tunnel doesn't end. It just follows you into the daylight, reminding you that some wars don't finish when the fighting stops. Some wars dig themselves into you, and you carry them forever. You followed the crawl from the surface down into the earth, through air thick enough to choke, through silence that made your own heartbeat sound like a drum, past the traps, the animals, and the enemy waiting face to face in the dark. You felt the walls press in, the breath run short, the light falter, and the body bend to a space that was never built for it. And even after leaving the tunnel, you've seen how it clings, how it follows into daylight, how it reshapes the body, the mind, and the years that come after. That's what it was like to be a tunnel rat. A life measured not in miles marched or battles won, but in inches crawled, breaths rationed, and moments stolen back from the dark. A war fought in silence, fought alone, and carried home in ways no one else could see. And when you think of it now, when you imagine the small black mouths opening in the jungle, it's hard to believe anyone ever volunteered to go down into them at all, but they did, again and again, because someone had to.